Well, good morning, everyone. Did not mean to cut that off early, but I'm meteorologist Jake Lambright here today to host your first alert weather breakdown. We're going to talk, we've got a lot to talk about, actually. We've got a cold front coming through late tonight, early tomorrow morning. That is going to bring some pretty cold air for the weekend. Then we will start to warm up heading into next week. Rain chances start to increase. We'll take a look at that as well. And then coming up after a short break, we'll talk a little bit more about the different precipitation types and why, despite we were so cold this past weekend, that we ended up seeing sleet and freezing rain as opposed to snow. All right, let's go ahead and dive right in here with a look at our weather setup heading late tonight into early Friday morning. As I mentioned, we've got a cold front coming through. It will drop temperatures for your Friday, but it will drop them even further by Saturday. Another thing that is not going to help us at all are the wind gusts. In fact, here's a look at winds overnight tonight. You'll see them gusting anywhere from about 20 to 25 miles per hour across much of our area. So tomorrow morning, of course, feels like temperatures will feel cooler, and we'll take a look at those here in just a moment. But of course, it will also be breezy. So those strong winds affect your work. Maybe you're outside farming or tending to things outdoors. Again, pay close attention to the weather. Secure your loose outdoor patio furniture before you go to bed tonight because, again, those winds will pick up and they'll be quite breezy for some time. Here's a look at things Friday morning. You'll see wind gusts continuing at about 15 to 20 miles per hour. And then they actually get stronger Friday night into Saturday morning. You'll see what's plotted there on the map shows about 20 to 30 miles per hour. But when we start to get into those reds, those are going to be isolated higher wind gusts, 35, maybe close to 40 miles per hour. So, of course, with cold temperatures and wind gusts of that speed, it is going to feel very cold out there. Here's what will look like as you head out the door tomorrow morning. Maybe some mid to upper teens across East Texas and southeastern Oklahoma. For the rest of East Texas, northwest Louisiana, southwest Arkansas, we're looking at your high temperatures, or I say high temperatures, feels like temperatures Friday morning in the low to mid 20s. Then as we go into Friday afternoon, we'll still have those winds around, so that'll keep us a few degrees cooler than our air temperatures. You'll notice feels like temps in the mid 30s Friday afternoon. Then as you get closer to I-20, that's where you see feels like temperatures in the upper 30s to lower 40s. Now, here comes the very frigid feels like temperatures. This is overnight Friday into early Saturday morning. We could see single digit feels like temperatures across much of the area, and air temperatures won't be as cool. So here's a look at our freeze forecast for the next 7 days, and this here is going to be pretty important. Let me go and pull that up there for you. So again, tonight we will not be below freezing, at least here in Shreveport-Bossier. We'll see lows there near 36. Then Friday night into Saturday, that's when we start to see temps in the low 20s. So Saturday morning, we're in the low 20s, but again, with those strong winds, feels like temperatures will be in the single digits. Then Saturday night into Sunday, we're back in the low 20s for your air temperatures, and then upper 20s Sunday night into Monday morning. After that, we're above freezing the rest of that 7-day forecast. Here's a look at your lows across the Arklatex tomorrow. Light freeze can't be ruled out, especially across eastern Texas and portions of southeast Oklahoma. But for us in the Shreveport-Bossier area, we should stay a few degrees above freezing early tomorrow morning. Some patchy frost, though, will be possible. All right, let's take a look here at your temperature trend for the next 7 days. This is where things also look pretty cold as well. You'll see Friday afternoon, our highs will be in the mid 40s. From there, we go to the mid 30s on Saturday afternoon for your high temperature, mid 40s by Sunday. And then as we head into next week, this cold's going to be a distant memory. We'll be keeping temperatures a lot closer to our average for this time of the year, again, as we head toward the start of next week, and that continuing through much of next week. All right, let's talk about your rain chances, and then we'll dive in a little bit further into your extended outlook before we talk about that precipitation from last weekend. Rain chances over the next 7 days, we're looking at anywhere from a 30% chance of rain on Tuesday. Those chances increase by Wednesday to near 60%. As we go through the next 7 days, so again, this is really tallying up your Tuesday and Wednesday totals. We're looking at anywhere between half an inch of rain to 1 inch of rain across much of the Arklatex, and this is some much needed rain. In fact, you see yourself kind of in that teal, that darker green color, that's closer to half an inch of rain. The blue indicates rainfall totals closer to 1 inch of rain. Today is Thursday, which means that we get a new drought monitor. So let's dive into that and compare it to last week's. Not any significant changes. Just a small patch there kind of near Panola and Shelby County. I'll make that full screen so you can see it a little bit better. A little patch there in Panola and Sabine County in Texas that went from severe drought conditions to moderate, from a level 2 to a level 1. But again, that's a very small patch there where we've seen some changes. Otherwise, the drought monitor largely unchanged last week to this week. One thing I do want to note, though, that may help us out next week is that this data is collected on Tuesdays and then the outlook is released on Thursday. We didn't see a lot of melting by the time the data was collected for this on Tuesday morning, so the melting of all of that ice should, in theory, help much of us out, maybe see some improvements when we get to next week's drought monitor. All right, so again, we need more rain, of course. This ice isn't going to completely get us out of a drought. We've got those rain chances on the way next week. Let's talk our extended outlooks when it comes to both temperatures and precipitation. Here's a look at our temperature outlook next 6 to 10 days, taking you just beyond that 7-day forecast. This is February 3rd through the 7th. It's really a coin toss whether we're slightly below or slightly above average. Right now, I'm leaning toward us being near or slightly below average, just based on what I have in the forecast. We will, though, as we get closer to next weekend, likely shift to above average. I'm already seeing some strong signals. We'll see high temperatures in the 60s as we head toward not this upcoming weekend. It's going to be cold, but the weekend after that, we should be a lot closer to the lower 60s. So with that said, kind of a coin toss. We start that 6 to 10 day window off just below average and then start to see things shift to slightly above average temperatures. When it comes to rainfall amounts in that same time frame, this is trying to hint at above average amounts of precipitation. I'm just not buying it or I take that back. In the beginning stages of that time frame, yes, an above average amount of precipitation is possible, but toward the end of that 10-day window, that's where we start to dry out once again. We start to see the sunshine, not so much of those rain chances, at least what I'm seeing in my forecast so far, again, toward the end of that 6 to 10 day window. So I'm going to look here real quick. We're streaming live right now on Facebook and YouTube. Going to see if I have any questions here to the side. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave those in our Facebook comments. I will be answering those here in just a moment. I'll leave the actually leave our rain chances here full screen while I pull this up. And again, I apologize in advance for that. But again, we've got a cold weekend ahead. I'm already counting down the days to that warmer weather coming next week, and also those rain chances, because like I said, we really need some more rain. All right, looks like I've got our comments section pulled up, so let me see if I can get that back there. Joyce is joining me this morning. Happy Thursday. That's what Joyce commented there on Facebook. Happy Thursday to you as well. We are almost to Friday, just one day away from TGIF. Go ahead and take that off the screen. So again, if you have any questions, please feel free to leave those in our Facebook comments. I'm going to be back after a short break. We'll talk more about last week's winter weather event, kind of recap some of that, and talk about why it was so cold and we saw freezing rain and some sleet instead of snow. Those details coming up right after this break. All right, I'm still here with y'all. We're going to be on break for just a second, trying to get one more thing pulled in that's going to be very helpful for this. So I'll be right back in just a second. All right, I am back. I realized I could pull in some more visuals to help us out, kind of recap this event. So I wanted to do that again to kind of give y'all the best that I can here. I'm going to switch things over real quick. Let's start off with a look at our kind of ice totals. Let's see if I can get that pulled up. There we go. So freezing rain and ice totals from this winter weather event. And this data is courtesy of the National Weather Service in Shreveport, as well as some local reports that they received as well. So this is the Arklatex region. This is freezing rain and ice accumulation. So you'll notice out toward Harrison County, we saw about 1/4 of an inch. Same toward the Shreveport-Bossier area. Most of that in town just barely missed us, but southern Caddo Parish got about 1/2 inch of accumulations there when it came to ice. Then as you get south, out toward DeSoto, Red River Parish, Panola County, Shelby County, this lines up with the areas that had the most power outages during this whole winter weather event. You'll see that they saw closer to 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch of ice, which again, once we get to 1/2 inch of ice accumulations and beyond, that's when we really start to have issues with power outages and whatnot. So again, that lines up with the area that saw the most power outages during this entire winter weather event. Then as you go out to the east, things were okay till you got to basically the Lincoln-Ouachita Parish line. Then those ice accumulations really started to pick up once again. And out toward Monroe, there are reports, I mean, this is very evident based on what I've seen, reports of up to 1 inch of freezing rain accumulation. I mean, that's a ton. And again, plenty, more than enough to cause some issues for us. Then as we look to, if I get this pulled up, this says snowfall, but this also accounts for sleet accumulations. This is where we saw a lot of accumulations across the Arklatex. You'll see out toward the Shreveport-Bossier Metro, down through Bossier Parish, down into portions of DeSoto and Red River. We saw anywhere, there were reports of 4 to 6 inches of sleet accumulation. Out in southern Harrison County, basically where I-20 runs through Marshall, area south, there have been reports of 3 inches of sleet accumulation, 3.5 out toward Harleton. Then as you get out kind of near north of I-30, roughly 3 to 4 inches of sleet accumulation, and even back into portions of Bienville, Lincoln Parish in northwest Louisiana, we got some 3 to 4 inch totals. So a good amount of sleet fell. That, and thankfully, of course, the sleet accumulation caused more than its fair share of issues on the roadways, but because it was sleet, we didn't see as many power issues in Shreveport-Bossier itself. I'm going to pull that freezing rain and ice accumulation back up. And again, where you see those higher amounts there, that 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch at Panola, Shelby, Red River, and Panola and Shelby County in Texas, and then DeSoto and Red River Parish in Louisiana. That's where we had the highest concentration of power outages in the Arklatex. And then, of course, the Monroe area got hit very, very hard. In fact, let me actually pull this up for you full screen real quick. I actually want to show you a video that was shared to me by a viewer of what things looked like in the Monroe area. It did not look like Monroe. It looked like something out of a movie, and not so much in a good way. I'm going to see if I can't get that pulled up here for just a second. Again, what you're looking at right now is our freezing rain and sleet accumulations across the Arklatex from this winter weather event that we saw this past weekend. Quite the accumulations, for sure, across our area. And then for those just joining, possibly, here's a look at our, I know it says snowfall. This is mainly sleet accumulations, though, across the Arklatex. Pretty good amount there, as you can see on your screen. So I am working on getting that video. I am almost there. You know how technology works sometimes. It's hard to get it going sometimes when you need it the most. I think I'm almost there to getting this video pulled up. And maybe not. You know how technology works sometimes. My last resort here is going to be Facebook, as I cannot find it on our website for some reason. Here we go. Looks like I might be able to pull it up here. So again, we had a viewer out in Rayville. This is just east of Monroe. Submit this video, and I wanted to share it with you here because again, this is not the site that you expect to see in northern Louisiana. Here's a look at that video. And wow, I mean, like I said, it looks like it's in a movie. You just don't see stuff like that here in northern Louisiana. So that was out where they had closer to 1 inch of ice accumulations. And again, it looks amazing, but it's also scary at the same time because based on the look of those trees, you can tell how much ice they're holding. And when those tree limbs start snapping, of course, that causes more power issues. There are still people in that area that still don't have power and are still dealing with some significant issues. All right, now that we have recapped our totals, let's talk about our precipitation types and why we ended up seeing more sleet and freezing rain as opposed to snow. Let me grab my laptop here real quick, get us off of that rain chances graphic, and let's talk all about precipitation. So this here is a good graphic that kind of breaks down the precipitation types, and I'm going to also explain this a little bit more in depth. So whenever we're looking at the atmosphere from the ground up, from the sky there down to the ground, if temperatures are above freezing the whole time, which is what you see in this scenario right here, then we just see straight rain. As we go, pull this over here, this scenario here, freezing rain, and I'm going to break this down a little bit further here in just a second. It's when we see that rain initially follows snow. They're way up in the atmosphere. Then it has time to warm up. We have a warm nose where temperature, there's an inversion, and it gets above freezing. But then right before it gets to us at the ground, it has the chance to freeze once again. So it falls as liquid rain, but as soon as it hits an object, hits the road, hits the ground, hits your car, it freezes. That's freezing rain, and that's what mainly areas to our east saw, or just to the south of Shreveport-Bossier, sleet. This is what we dealt with the most this past weekend. And it's kind of the same as freezing rain. There's still that inversion in the atmosphere above the ground, but what happens is that snowflake does warm up and it melts into liquid rain, but it has more time to refreeze before it hits the ground. That's sleet. And then snow, of course, it starts to snow. It stays below freezing the whole time. And as it gets closer to the ground, of course, it's still below freezing, so it just remains as a snowflake. And I actually pulled over some useful diagrams here. And I wish I had a pen tool to break this down. Let me actually put this here in my little box. So this here is an observed sounding from the Shreveport Airport. The Shreveport National Weather Service launched this weather balloon. And if you caught my First Alert Weather Breakdown episode last week, I actually talked with the National Weather Service Shreveport about the data that these balloons collect, how it's valuable to us. This here is a prime example of how that data is valuable to us. So give me just a second here. I'm actually going to put this full screen for 1 second. Have to convert something here into kilometers, because I know how many feet we're talking about here, but all of this is in kilometers. Again, sorry about that. Let me actually make that full screen for you here in just a second. All right, so and again, I wish I had a pen. I don't think I have a way to point this out, but that chart here, you'll notice on the left side, you've got 100, 200, 300, 400, all the way down to 1,000. So ground level is 1,000. We're looking at this at the atmosphere from the ground level all the way to the top of our layer of the atmosphere. So your commercial plane, you get on a plane, it gets up there, cruising altitude, it's usually going to be between that 200 mark and 400 mark, just to put into perspective. So between 2 and 400 on the left side, that's where planes, commercial airlines kind of cruise at, cruising altitude. That's about 8 to 12 kilometers up in the atmosphere. We're at 1,000. Kind of, again, to put into perspective the depth that we're talking about here. So this Shreveport sounding, that's what we call it in the meteorological world. You'll notice how there at the ground at that 1,000, how all of a sudden those two lines are way further to the left than, let's say, the 900 mark. This is an example of a freezing rain sounding. That 900 is not far above us from that 1,000 at the ground level. So again, this is an example where we see, and again, that zero line, it's sideways, it's dashed, but there's a pretty good warm nose, so more than enough room for that snowflake to melt. It turns into liquid rain, and because temperatures go well below freezing close to us at the ground, when that liquid rain falls and it hits a car, a road, you name it, it freezes on contact. So that was a freezing rain sounding that we saw. That was Saturday evening here in Shreveport. And again, that was observed. That was a weather balloon that got sent up in the air and collected data in our atmosphere. Now, we did see mostly sleet, but in this sounding here, that's kind of a prime time for when we saw freezing rain. All right, let me pull up a sounding from Fort Worth. This one here is a prime example of sleet. So again, our commercial airlines or airliners, they're flying in between that 200 and 400 mark in the atmosphere. We're at that 1,000 level. Notice how this time around, that nose or how it goes to the right, that shows warmer temperatures and inversion up higher in our atmosphere. Notice how that is not as close to the 900. It's kind of right around that 800, which means that temperatures are decreasing and going back to below freezing a little bit higher in the atmosphere than they were in Shreveport. That gives that liquid rain droplet, what fell as a snowflake, melted to liquid rain. It gave it more time to refreeze, and so it fell to the ground as sleet, more of a sleet pellet, which again still causes issues and ice on the roads, but doesn't cause, as much accumulation on power lines. So that's kind of the big difference between sleet and snow. We saw more sleet here in Shreveport-Bossier, but we had a good amount of freezing rain just to our south in DeSoto and Red River Parish, as well as out toward northeast Louisiana, out toward the Monroe area. All right, so that is all that I have for us today on the First Alert Weather Breakdown podcast. Again, just kind of wanted to break down, of course, recap that event. Those event totals. Again, I'll put those up on the screen for you here for just a second. It's pretty impressive. What you're seeing right now is the freezing rain and ice accumulations. And here in just a second, I'll put the snow accumulations on one more time. But again, some pretty impressive totals that we saw from last week's winter weather event. We are getting colder this weekend. No precipitation really expected this time around. But with that said, tomorrow I've got a very interesting interview lined up. I will be interviewing Miss Amy Dixon, the superintendent of Elysian Fields ISD. And what we're going to talk about is the question that many of you have whenever we have winter weather, severe weather flooding, is will school be canceled for my kid? We're going to talk about the variables and the factors that school administrators have to look at and evaluate before making that final call. And also, with Elysian Fields being a smaller school district, being out more in the country, some of the unique challenges that smaller and more rural school districts may face compared to your more urban districts around the Arklatex. All right, thank you so much for joining me today for First Alert Weather Breakdown. I will see you back here tomorrow at 10:30. You can also catch me live with another weather update for you coming up on KSLA News 12 coming up today at noon. Thank you so much for joining me. Y'all have a great rest of your Thursday.